President Zelensky releases his Ukraine victory plan. No real pathway to peace, but a view of a potential post-war Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a speech to the Ukraine parliament on Wednesday, October 16th. The purpose of the speech was to release the outline of the so-called Ukraine victory plan that prior to Wednesday had only been shared with a select number of foreign supporters of Ukraine, including the United States. The plan was to be released last week at the Ramstein Group, a group of over 50 nations that have a stake in the war, but that meeting was postponed due to the administration needing to focus on hurricane recovery efforts in the United States due to election year politics. The plan, as had been rumored, does not provide any clear pathway to peace or victory, but it does have some interesting points of what a post-war Ukraine could look like. The plan has 5 main parts that were released before Parliament and 3 secret protocols that were not discussed. Below are the 5 main points. Point 1. Ukraine should receive an immediate invitation to join NATO. Point 2. Strengthen Ukraine's defense abilities by providing it with more long-range weapons and all usage restrictions removed. Point 3. Western countries deploy armed forces in Ukraine to prevent further Russian aggression. Point 4. Offer the West investment opportunities for Ukraine's natural resources and reach agreements with the West to secure these resources. Point 5. Post-war security by making Ukraine a significant ally in Western security, even suggesting Ukraine armed forces replace U.S. armed forces in Europe. The 5 points do not specifically mention European Union membership, but since this is just a summary provided, it might be included in the details of one of the points, as it can be assumed that a post-war Ukraine will need EU economic support for rebuilding. It should be required, as Ukraine can expect that it will get no financial support from Russia and most likely not agree to China Belt and Road Initiative help while China is allied with Russia. The invitation to NATO would not necessarily mean NATO membership, as extending membership to a country at war or with territorial disputes is contrary to NATO membership requirements. The NATO rules would have to be amended to get past these requirements, which would require unanimous approval. However, offering membership would be a lower hurdle, but it would receive opposition by some NATO countries because it would be seen as a factor in prolonging the war because of Russia's public objections to Ukraine NATO membership. Point 2 is nothing new and had been a point of contention for the Ukrainians for months, and President Zelensky is on a public relations campaign against the United States and Germany over this issue, as neither will agree to this point due to not wanting to risk extending the conflict with Russia. Point 3 is not a new idea and has been promoted by former NATO Secretary General Anders Rasmussen as a way to prevent and reduce the size of the battlefield by deploying Western troops working outside of NATO to serve as a tripwire of sorts to Russian aggression and eventually forcing them to curb their military operations to prevent accidentally attacking Western forces and leading to a wider war. French President Emmanuel Macron has also suggested a version of this idea to prevent the Russians from extending their gains in the Donbass. France currently has 1,500 legionnaires deployed in Ukraine as part of this policy, though they are far removed from the front lines. This does have merit as a deterrent to armed aggression, but also puts Western troops in the line of fire and does create a likelihood of starting a war between Russia and the West. Point 4 is Ukraine making an offer to the West that it will provide them resources they need, and thus he is highlighting the benefits of Ukraine staying out of Russian control, and it could benefit the West. This would make Ukraine a lucrative destination for Western foreign investment. This could be an important step in rebuilding the country. France has been leading an advocate to move more EU country arms production to Ukraine as well to give them an industrial base and produce military hardware such as artillery ammunition, cheaper than in other EU countries. Point 5 is a post-war suggestion of how Ukraine could integrate into the Western military structure to the point that Ukraine's security is European security and does solve the part of the long-term security problems for Ukraine. The idea of Ukraine troops replacing U.S. troops in Europe is a dream of President Macron, as he started promoting in 2023 the idea of Europe being less dependent on the U.S. for its security. It will benefit the U.S. as well as it pivots such much of its attention to the Western Pacific and its ongoing security concerns with China. The 3 secret protocols are suspicious, so full evaluation of the Ukrainian plan has to be withheld along with Western support. The citizens of the West should be aware of if anything is being asked of their governments to support the Ukraine plan. The other issue is, just like the officials that saw the plan before the public release, is the lack of details on how this will be executed and how it will attain victory or peace. It does give an outline of how Ukraine would like to see post-war Ukraine being integrated into Europe, both militarily and financially. This would increase the value to Ukraine as a member of Europe and will make Ukrainian security and European security real and not a buzzword phrase that it is today. The flip side of the agreement is that its full goals are absolutely opposed by Russia and could force the Kremlin to the point that there is no point in negotiating with Ukraine and will assume the battlefield is the better alternative to attain its long-term goals and prevent this plan's implementation. This might be the Ukraine's ultimate point in that Russia will have to be forced to accept Ukraine's demands or it must keep fighting. The way the West could eliminate Russia's options is to keep fighting and could force it into the war is to relent to point 3 and possibly point 1 and 2 and go ahead and deploy forces into unoccupied Ukraine to force Russia to stop its nationwide attacks and to prevent it from continuing its advances to avoid Western forces. It is doubtful that there is political support in the West for such a measure while the war is still being fought, though. In the end, the public points of the victory plan is a roadmap to a post-war Ukraine and would be a post-war Ukraine that Russia will not accept. If the West accepts this plan as written, and knowing we do not have we do not know the secret protocols, they are committing themselves to a longer war to support Ukraine beyond 2025. However, Western support cannot address the Ukraine demographic disadvantage, so the longer the war goes on, the more desperate the Ukrainian manpower issues will become, even with full long-range weapons use. Overall, this plan provides more obstacles for peace and does not provide a clear pathway to victory.